Right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the July Development Control Committee meeting. For the benefit of members of the public watching or participating in this meeting, I would like to explain who everyone is. My name is Councillor Tony Durrant and I am the chair of this committee. To my right are the councillors who will be making decisions on the applications on this evening's agenda. To my immediate right and left are the officers who will be presenting applications and providing advice to the committee. The Development Control Committee is a regulatory committee and not a political meeting. The committee will be considering the published papers and examining the evidence brought before us tonight and will make decisions based on planning reasons. We are guided by national and local planning policy and guidance. At an appropriate time, I will invite speakers to contribute to the meeting in the order set out on the update paper. May I ask all speakers, including visiting members, to speak clearly and to keep points made on the application to material reasons only. No further dialogue between members of the committee and speakers will be permitted once questioning is finished. All speakers will be reminded of their permitted speaking time and will be advised when they have 1 minute remaining. May I ask all committee members to avoid repetition and to keep comments on each application to a maximum of 4 minutes. This evening we have 4 items on the agenda for our consideration and one would hope to think we might finish before 9 o'clock, but it'll take as long as it takes. I understand that planning can be emotive and that everyone remains polite, and ask everyone to remain polite and professional throughout this meeting. Thank you very much for your attention. We can move to the agenda. Apologies and substitutions. We have 2 apologies, Councillor Freeman and Councillor Hussey. There are no substitutions. Any declarations of interest from members? No, thank you. There's no urgent matters to consider. Minutes of the meeting held on June the 10th, 2026. I will move that the minutes hold a correct record of that meeting. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Court, all those in favour? Thank you. Right, we can move to item 5, which is applications for planning permission. And if the officer would like to introduce item 1.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much, Chair. Item 1, this application seeks full planning permission for the erection of a new steel portal framed building to be used as an on-grain dryer and a store. The application is land at Manor Farm in Old Berkeley towards Newsbury on a large farm holding. The building itself is nearly 37 metres long and 18 metres wide, dual pitch roof with a maximum height of 9.7 metres. It's clad in farmscape anthracite fibre cement sheeting on the roof, which is very dark. The walls are vertical stained timber and roller doors, and the front is a Van Dyke brown in colour, which is sort of a greeny brown. The site lies outside any settlement boundary. It's within a countryside location and within the North Wessex Downs area of outstanding natural beauty, the national landscape. Of significant note is the footpath that runs all along the highway there, which is shared for the vehicular traffic. The site itself is 8,700 square metre yard within a much larger farm holding that makes up Manor Farm, with the main complex of buildings just a bit further to the north. It was formerly a disused railway station, and has currently got an agricultural use and is used to store wrap, hay, straw, etc. So agricultural machinery is in use. There's no updates to report since the agenda was published. There was an appeal decision of note that was with matters of transport, generating trips, landscape, its significance and substantial benefits were found, which were matters dealt with in the previous appeal on this site. The application is recommended for approval as set out in the report, and it's subject to planning conditions at the end of the report, and also the heads of terms in the legal agreements recommended at the start of the report. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Right, thank you. We have 3 speakers tonight. Firstly, in objection, we have Sir Charlie Mayfield. If you'd like to come down and speak. No. Okay, we have two speakers in support, James Pavey and Simon Andrews. If you would like to take the seats on your right in the first row, you will have 4 minutes between you. When you press the button on the right hand side, the red light will come on. You have 4 minutes then. I will give you a call at 1 minute to go.
Chair, good evening. I'm James Pavey. I'm a planning partner of Owen Mitchell Solicitors. Simon Andrews is the farm manager at Porchester Farms. We're here this evening, and it'll be principally me to speak on behalf of the applicant, Lord Carnarvon, who apologises that he's unable to be here himself. I've done this long enough to know that no one really wants to listen on a warm evening to a solicitor, but I thank you for doing so. If we can take a step back with this. It's a simple application for a single agricultural building, a grain store. It's on a farm in a location where there are already agricultural buildings and operations and storage. It's in an agricultural landscape, and as the officer acknowledges, agricultural barns form part of the wider landscape character. Granting permission subject to the conditions recommended by the officer is supported by the two parish councils. Again, subject to conditions, there have been no objections from the statutory consultees and many other public consultees, and importantly, the landscape officer here has no objection. And you'd be forgiven for wondering why it's taken 20 months from validation in November 2024 to get in front of you for you to consider. But having read the officer's report, you'll know that two previous applications were defeated, one on appeal for similar propositions, after a relatively sustained opposition from a small number of people. You may not be aware that actually two applications for similar sized barns, not grain stores, were granted by this council, one in 2021, reference number 848, and that was at Ivory Farm, which you can see from the top of Beacon Hill like this would be seen. And secondly, this year, and the reference is 452, and that was a permitted development rights approval for a straw barn at Crux Easton. But I give those to you as a matter of consistency, and you wonder what's different for this barn. Well, I think the only difference really here is that those other ones were not in the backyards of Sir Charlie Mayfield and Mr. Lidgley. You have before you a thorough and well-prepared officer's report recommending approval. I can't improve on it. I recommend it to you as a good, rational, sound, lawful basis for making that decision. But in particular, I would emphasise that this is a one-off piece of development with significant local economic benefit. As part of the farm infrastructure, it will ensure that arable operations remain economically viable for the next generation in what's a long-term family business, and it employs 7 people locally full-time and 3 people part-time. It's a sustainable piece of development. It's on a brownfield site, vacated courtesy of Dr. Beeching, and it's all about cutting carbon emissions. It's avoiding tractor journeys further onto the estate. So my 1 minute calling. And thirdly, my clients listened to the previous objections. You'll find the reduced dimensions in the officer's report. I believe you asked on the site visit about the design and appearance and how it's more sympathetic, and also that there will be planting of blocks of woodland by way of screening. 2 obstacles have really been put in your course, I think, and I would say that they're more like siren calls luring you onto the rocks of another appeal. But in landscape, the officer's report deals with that. It's a matter of planning judgment. The harm is limited. As to the track, the officer's report deals with that. Ownership is not an issue. That's a property matter. The red line doesn't actually have to abut the highway. And if there's any point made about notice and procedure and all the rest of it, there has been plenty of opportunity in 3 rounds of consultation for anyone to object, and they have. So on my client's behalf, I invite you to grant the application on the basis set out in the report. It's a sane and sensible piece of country planning here, supported by policy, consistent with your previous decision making, and I have in mind Ivory Farm Barn, and as a matter of planning judgment, the benefit outweighs the landscape impact. Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Councillor Ganesh.
So you mentioned about the economic impact, how would this improve or have any additional or positive economic impact by having this?
Sorry, I'm Simon. If I answer that one, we're currently having to take any grain that requires drying on about an hour and a 10-minute journey to another farm to have that dried and then return that journey. So the economic benefit will be for us not having to cart the grain to another place to have it dried, and also reduces the carbon emissions from the farm.
Just to add to that, I mean, Simon is a farm manager of the year, as I embarrass him by mentioning, and I'm just the lawyer, but it is that the margins are surprisingly tight in running arable businesses. And if you think about it, you're going into a global market. And actually, you have to control and think about all of those variables in the economic picture very carefully. So things like this have a big difference in terms of the margin.
Councillor Court.
Thank you.
Turn your microphone off, please.
Which button? Is it both of
The
them?
right one again. That's it, thank you.
Try again. Good evening. Can you tell me something about the screening you're proposing in terms of its height and type of tree?
Yes, we've proposed a robust planting plan for both sides of it. We've got a mixture of native and faster growing trees to go on the left and right hand side of it, and we've actually moved the building slightly further up the plot so to take use of the already in place screening.
And just to add to that, if I may, I think there was exploration as to what use the current trees can be put to in tree surveys, and quite a lot of that was found to be ash and deadwood. That's why there's been more extensive thought about considerably more planting, and that may take a little longer actually to provide the screening, but it will provide good long-term screening.
Thank you. Councillor Court again, please.
If I could just take that a bit further. In the report, there's been some discussion about mature trees and mature planting, and I don't know whether that's been considered.
Sorry, was it about the trees that are already there, or was it?
No, there was discussions about the prospects of what height of trees and what size of trees you'd be planting rather than saplings, what sort of trees you're being, is it any bigger?
Yeah, they were included in a revised planting plan. So we've gone for taller trees, standards, not just whips, and the density was increased.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other councillors? No? Much, if you'd like to return to your seats. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
We now have questions for officers. Councillor Bound. Sorry, Councillor Bound. Sorry.
Okay.
The brain freeze then for a second. Do apologise.
Is it possible for us to have the view from Beacon Hill towards the site, please? And could the officer point out where the build is? Where the proposal... No, not that one. Well, yes, I suppose so, but I can't read it. Yeah, yeah. To the right.
Just to clarify, Chair, that's the position of the proposed barn, and this is, I think we've got the next ones which show some of the mature planting from the same viewpoint. If you just scroll down, yeah, so that's it. You can see if you keep your eye on that reference point, if you put your cursor back on it, that's it. Just slightly to the left and up. That's it. Yep. So you can see that the trees behind it, and if you click onto the next one, then that's at year 6, and again, that's year 15. There has been some mention that it's possibly a little bit, showing it a little bit grown thicker and taller than perhaps at those margins. So if you just put a bit of margin error on that, it might not be quite as established by those years in your assessment, but you can see that those woodland belts are designed for the gaps in those special viewpoints from such as Beacon Hill.
I didn't ask my question, but you've answered it, so...
Anyone else for a question? Okay, thank you. We can move to debate. Councillor McCormick.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm happy to move the recommendation, having visited the site Friday. I think the nature of the height of the building, there's not a lot you can do about, because you've got to have a certain amount of height for aerating the crops and getting trucks at the door. There's trees quite close to the site. There's similar height to the building. There's going to be more planting for screening. We didn't venture up Beacon Hill. It would have taken us all morning if we had done. But having looked at the views, I think that the impact on it is fairly minimal. Obviously, the applicant has a clear economically with these hour-plus trips by truck to get his grain dry. That seems like a major pain. Yeah, on balance, I think the application vastly benefits. The benefits outweigh any potential drawbacks on it. So on that basis, I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Come to you, Councillor Ganesh. Do I have a seconder? Oh, Councillor Court. I could whip it there. Thank you.
Happy to second, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ganesh, do you wish to speak?
I think by looking at the statutory consultee's comments, I can't see any concerns in approving this application. And one of the key thing that I like about this application is the biodiversity net gain within the site, which is something that come forward by, I don't know, by the officers or the applicant, but something should be welcomed, and happy to support the application.
Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Yes, just one small point. Given the current state of the climate, that the whips should have some facility to ensure that they're well watered so they thrive.
We have a motion on the table to approve the officer's recommendation. It's been seconded. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. The application is approved as per the conditions in the agenda paper and subject to the legal agreement as set out in the main report.
Thank you. We can move to agenda to application 2, and we have three speakers. If the officer would like to introduce.
Thank you, Chair. This application seeks full planning permission for the construction of a single-storey side extension on the western side of St Leonard's Church, a Grade 2 star listed building. Further works include the extension and regrading of existing footpaths, the installation of 2 air source heat pumps, and the provision of cycle stands. By way of an update, the update paper should refer to condition 15 and not 16, and this has just been amended to ensure that it covers not only noise emission but also the appearance of the air source heat pumps, as these are quite small on the southern elevation. The proposed development would deliver substantial public benefits through the provision of additional floor space, enabling services currently accommodated elsewhere to be relocated back into the church and supporting its growing role in the local community. Whilst the proposal would result in less than substantial harm to the significance of the Grade 2 star listed building, it is considered that the public benefits arising from the development outweigh these harms. Accordingly, the application is recommended for approval, subject to conditions listed at the end of the report. Thank you.
Thank you. As I said, we have 3 speakers, 2 speakers in support. Elisa Biram and the Reverend Dr. Ben Kutzner. If you'd like to come forward, take the 2 right-hand seats on the first row. When you press the right-hand button on one of those machines, you will have 4 minutes, and I will give you a call at 1 minute to go. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair and members of the Planning Committee. My name is Alyssa Byram, the planning consultant for this application, and I'm joined by Reverend Dr. Ben Kautzer of St. Leonard's Church. Firstly, I would like to thank the case officer for their thorough assessment, which has resulted in a recommendation for approval. We also appreciate the constructive engagement of the conservation officer and other consultees. and we are happy to accept the proposed conditions. The main issues relate to the impact on the listed church and the surrounding landscape. Following discussions with Historic England, heritage bodies, and the council, the scheme was amended to reduce its impact while still meeting the church's operational needs. As the committee report concludes, the proposal would result in less than substantial harm to the listed church, which is outweighed by the significant public benefits. The report also finds that landscape impacts would be limited due to the extension's modest scale. We respectfully ask members to support the officer's recommendation and grant planning permission. I will now hand over to Reverend Dr. Ben Kautzer, who will explain the need for the extension.
Good evening, everyone. After extensive consultation over many years, we believe we've reached a welcomed consensus with historical societies and conservation officer about the need for this extension to St. Leonard's. The project seeks to improve the sustainability, accessibility, flexibility, capacity, and security of St. Leonard's Church. To conserve this valued heritage asset for future generations, we feel it's necessary to repair its critical infrastructure, improve its basic public facilities, and make the space fit for purpose to respond to the needs of our community. St. Leonard's is already a thriving church, providing support to people of all ages across the parish. For example, our community advocate for older people champions the spiritual and physical well-being of local residents. But we struggle to use our beautiful church building for this work due to its limited disabled access and lack of basic facilities. We offer extensive and dynamic youth engagement within Oakley. In our modest village, over 100 young people attend our monthly youth club. 50 to 60 secondary school students drop into our youth cafe every Tuesday. And we would love to be able to host youth events, school visits, performances, holiday clubs, making better use of St. Leonard's Church. Our preschool operates 5 days a week across the road at our center, where we offer 3 popular toddler groups a year and a club specifically for children with special educational needs. Unfortunately, this vital group can only run in the limited space of the school holidays because the church lacks flexibility to host while the preschool is in session. Our center hosts a myriad of groups and courses that support people through loneliness, mental health challenges, marriage and family crises, and bereavement. Demand for all of these support hubs is increasing with new housing into our community. But sadly, St. Leonard's remains closed to the public most days of the week and is not usable. And we want to do something about this. We believe that sensitive design will conserve and celebrate its historical significance. Basic toilet and kitchen facilities will improve its functionality. Improved access will enable everyone to enjoy it. And quite frankly, not having these basic functions is a bit embarrassing and unacceptable, especially for a church that exists to be a place of welcome and belonging for all. We recognize that there are some objections to this plan. Parking on Rectory Road is by definition physically limited, regardless of any additional activities to St. Leonard's. And this self-regulates the capacity of the site. But where there's peak car usage, we already have a range of local arrangements that we can flex to accommodate larger gatherings or services. We're passionate about our plans and how they will benefit Oakley Village. And none of this is going to be funded by the Church of England. This is all going to be funded by local people in our community who are passionate about seeing this historic asset conserved, used, and able to remain relevant and a valued focal point for our community now, but also for a generation to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Questions from members? Or Councillor Bound and Councillor Jones?
Good evening. Did you consult with the local people about the actual design of the building?
Yes, we have had, this project has been in the making for multiple years, and we have hosted a range of different public consultation events within the community, inviting feedback and perspective at several junctions along the way.
Did the community, did they have an opportunity to make comment about the application itself, and were there any alternatives put to them?
So at each juncture that we've presented the plans, we've also presented a full options appraisal as you look around the whole site of where else you could put this extension. For those who walk the grounds at St. Leonard's, it's really obvious that this is the only place that you could put an extension. Around the back there are modern graves. To the north and south, those are the main viewing sites for the church. All of these have been presented, and people have had opportunity to comment and make feedback. The main comment we tend to get from the community is a sense of frustration that local people can't access the building most of the time and would love to have their church restored to them. Without a lockable vestry within the church, it's difficult to make it secure enough to make that possible without it being manned. So all these things are been responsive to the feedback from the community as best as we can.
Thank you. Councillor Jones?
Yes, you mentioned disabled provision. What is that in terms of access and facilities?
Thank you. So within the body of the church, the structure of the pews and the steps up to the high altar and all of this physical space within the church is very confined and narrow and inflexible. Any time that you need someone to look after someone who's in a wheelchair, for example, it's very limited and difficult to move around within the body of the church. There are no toilet facilities at all, no running water. So we have many members of our congregation who simply don't come to church anymore because they find it embarrassing if they need to use facilities and they can't get out of the building, across the road, into the back end of the centre. It's not just about people with disability, but parents with little children. I have 3 of my own. And if one of them needs a loo and you're a visitor to the church, it's quite complicated. There's no space for a buggy. And obviously that's if the weather's good. If the weather's not well, then it adds complexities really fast. So.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Any more? Councillor Miller.
Thank you. Good evening, Ben. I think I'm going to go back to Councillor Bound's question. Trying to get my words in the right order here, because the 3 consultations you conducted with your parishioners, were they presented with some options on the design, not on the principle of where you were going to put it at all, but the design of your extension?
Do you have something specific in mind that you're asking about?
Were they only given the drawing that is presented before us and what we've seen in the application? Was that the design that you started with and carried on through with your consultations?
Thank you. The design has changed substantially at each round of consultation, both with the public and with the historical societies. Right at the beginning, when we first met with our architects to propose the design for the scheme, we had a range of different proposals of what the whole scheme could look like. Once we did our sort of feasibility project, as the project developed, it became clearer and clearer that the only options that were actually functional on this site to meet the needs of the church were an extension in the location that it is presented in. So at the beginning, we did all those presentations, and as we've honed the project, and we've been working on this for the better part of a decade, so this isn't something we've been doing fast. The project has got tighter and more refined as we've gone. So I think the honest answer is that there's been less of that as we've gone on, because we've gotten more careful with how the design has been shaped over time. But all of that has tried to be really sensitive to the feedback we've been receiving along the way.
Thank you. Any more questions? Councillor Ganesh. Thank you very much.
No, we're grateful for your time tonight. Thank you.
I'd like to retake your seats. We can now move to question.
Councillor Rowley.
Oh, sorry, yes, do apologise. Councillor Rowley. My apologies.
Thank you, Chair. After reviewing all the comments on the application, I'm speaking today to ask the committee to support the officer recommendation for approval. I'm going to start by sharing a section from the 1911 book, A History of the County of Hampshire, Volume 4. There was a church here in the 12th century, with a nave the size of the present one and a chancel. To this nave, about 1180 to 90, a south aisle was added, the west arch of the south arcade being of that date. The tower seems to have been built by Archbishop Warham early in the 16th century, and the south aisle or Morshanger Chapel was rebuilt at the same time, including the first bay of the south arcade. The chancel has no old features and its history is now not to be traced. Its width is probably that of the 12th century chancel. A great deal of repair and rebuilding took place in 1840 and 1868 to 97. The north aisle was added at the former date, but in 1868 was replaced by the present one, and the whole of the chancel, except part of the north wall. The north and south chapels, the east window of the south aisle being reused in the latter, and the greater part of the tower are of this date. So that's the 1868-97. The roofs and most of the fittings are furnished and furniture also being modern. So that's modern in 1911. My reason for sharing this is that I want to explain the history of the building. You can see it hasn't stood still, it has changed and adapted for centuries. We've worked on it in the 12th, 16th, 19th and 20th centuries. This application seeks to make the building suitable for the 21st century and beyond, whilst being respectful of its existing heritage. Now it is a Grade 2 star listed building as has been explained. As someone with membership to English Heritage, I appreciate the work required to conserve heritage assets for our future. To quote from their website, heritage lives in places and people, memories and stories, artifacts and traditions. It can connect us all to the past and to each other. It can make us happier, strengthen every community and help shape society for the better. Everybody should be able to enjoy the benefits it brings. And this application aims to do exactly that. By providing the church with a lockable vestry, the church should be able to be open for the visitors. Historical features within the church will be made more accessible, allowing people to view and enjoy the benefits of its heritage. Conserving heritage does not mean remaining still. We are today's custodians of this heritage and must continue to enhance it for the future, as it has been done in the past for our benefit today. It appears from work with the historical consultees that the requirement for an extension and the size, location and footprint are agreeable. Although it would have been preferred that a shared design view from the consultees had come forward, this wasn't possible. There was conflict between them. A determination now needs to be made on the balance of those concepts. So lastly, I also like to request some alterations to conditions, which I'm going to into questions, but it's 7F, G, 7J and 13. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions, councillors? No questions. Thank you very much. I'd like to retake your seat. And we will move to questions for officers. Councillor Ganesh has first dibs. Councillor Miller. Yep.
Thank you, Chair. So I've seen the objection from the trees officer and with the details of loss of 8 times category B trees. But there's a condition attached to it on 8, but I'm not sure if that was detailed enough to understand how that's mitigated.
So here's the existing tree survey. So you've got T35, the big tree that the tree officer was, oh yeah, can you highlight it, T35? Yeah, so that's the tree of main concern, and then it's all the trees here and this one here, yeah, that are all being removed to facilitate the extension. But they're category B, so they can be outweighed by public benefits, which is under the tree section in the report, just confirming that the benefits are so substantial that they outweigh the harm to the loss of these trees, and we've also put a replacement tree planting condition on.
A supplementary.
Yes.
Yeah. Is there any way we can strengthen the condition 8, which claims to mitigate some of this loss? Which, I mean, what I question is the lack of detail that I could see, that the direct mitigation of the loss of those trees.
So, yeah, so we've got, so condition 8.3 is tree planting and replacement tree planting scheduled to include the details of new tree genus and species with use of native species where appropriate, as well as tree sizes and pit root details following advice contained in British standards. That will need to be reviewed by the tree officer, so he'll need to be, and our landscape officer, who'll need to be satisfied that that replacement tree satisfies what we considered in the report. Does that seem reasonable? Excellent, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Miller.
On page 88,
Historic England still have an objection. The previous objections remain on the extension. Now, I think it's all down to the design. I think it's established that nobody's objecting to the extension, period. It was down to the design. Is that correct? And has there been any movement on this? This is what the previous questions were all about.
So we were in receipt, so with these questions were all presented to the agent. We've had receipt of an options appraisal. Within that, we've had footprints of extensions that were on other elevations. So it is quite a lengthy Word document that's on the file, which is why I couldn't take snippets out. But basically there is like a flat roof to the north. There's one that sort of comes out by a link to the east. And then there's another one to the south, although there's all the sorry, not the south, where the graves are at the back of the church. And those were all discounted by Historic England prior to the application being submitted in terms of, and the the Chancellor's judgment as well. And they all confirmed that the west side elevation was the best location. There has been back and forth on the size, but the applicants have demonstrated that they need that size. Any reduction in that size, you would either lose the toilets or the hall space wouldn't be sufficient to meet the needs that they require to bring services back and also hold other functions that they're looking to seek to give the community benefits. Another thing that was raised was the roof design, either changing the gable to the other way to match the church, but that would mean it would be more visible from the road and from the landscape because you'd have the flat sort of ridge being visible from there. And then other discussions were had about changing the roof design, but that would be quite convoluted and probably quite expensive, which then could bring in the viability of the extension. So everything was explored, which is why the application has been going on for some time without much change. So I hope has that answered everything?
I think, I'll tell you what, if I can explain, Chair, this is not a direct question. Just put in, there's two of us now have asked questions, but we haven't got the answers we're looking for. This is, when we looked from the east, we think the situation is right. We know that there's no arguments. We accept that they need the space. It's just looking at a glorified conservatory in front of a very beautiful, gorgeous church. Just didn't look right when we examined the drawing.
Can I just interject there? And so this really comes under debate.
And it's not. It's a question to officers, Chair. Please. I'm trying to put the context of the question. Councillor Bone tried it. We couldn't get anywhere. I'm trying to put this in the context that you've got. It's the design we're questioning. Was there ever a design in sympathy with the church instead of a conservatory? That's what we're trying to get at.
We are accepting the design of the extension as it is. We note we've given great weight to Historic England's objection in the report, and that has said we're not saying that there is not harm less than substantial at the moderate scale. We're not. The applicants we're at a point. The applicants are not going through another redesign. They've explained sufficiently to us. We consider that there is harm. However, that harm is outweighed by the public benefits, and we think that is sufficient enough to go against Historic England's comments. But Historic England do not do a public benefits assessment. That is us as the decision maker to make that assessment, not Historic England. So they will object, but they wouldn't have carried out the public benefits test, which I have done in the report.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Pound, and then Councillor Grassi.
In that view that we've got there, the left-hand drawing, which is presumably the view from the Remembrance Garden, I'm not quite clear what trees would mitigate against that view.
So we've said that in the report the views are all the views that are said that are screened are from Rectory Road. The visual amenity impact in terms of the public right-of-way, which that is the public right-of-way view that are assessed. We've assessed that there is some harm to those at a localised level, but in landscape terms, because there's the backdrop of the existing building, that harm is relatively moderate and is outweighed by the public benefits.
I do understand that. I'm still not clear what trees are going to be left that would actually...
So T48...
Thank you. Councillor Grassi.
I just checking, this is a medieval church and a Grade 2 listed building.
It's Grade 2 star, and it's on page... It's on page 8, page 96, 8.32, which is the medieval church enhanced by Victorian restoration, as Councillor Rowley has gone through.
And the last major changes were by the Victorians 157 years ago.
I don't know the exact date, but it's Victorian
1869.
Can we have the question, please?
I think you already answered it once. I'm just asking about the, would there be a more of a sympathetic architectural approach to this?
This is the application. This is, as it is submitted, this is what we're recommending for approval. There are conditions to control specific detailing, so materials, how it restores the historic fabric where it attaches to the existing church. Architectural detailing, so like plinths, window details, they are all secured to ensure they're high quality, but that is the experience of the extension that we're approving. We're just securing the details to ensure they're high quality. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions? Okay, thank you. We can move. Thank you, officers. We can move to debate. Sorry, Councillor Bound.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I did attend the viewing panel, and we had a really good look around the church and its surrounds, and we went out onto the footpath, the public footpath that runs close by, and we noted the remembrance garden. And the reason that I asked about the trees and the view that I would get towards the extension, which I don't doubt is actually required by the church, is that it's wide and it's very prominent, with quite a massing of roof area. And that's why I asked about the trees, because I thought if there were trees that were from the view from the remembrance garden, if there were trees that were actually planted back after the extension had been completed, and I don't know whether that's in conditions, that for me would overcome my qualms about going along with the officer recommendation.
Okay. Anybody else? Councillor Grassi.
I feel that there's a great opportunity to build an outstanding complementary building. Historic England also, I think, will agree. I feel that the change of look in a conservation area, in 157 years' time, will people look back and think, "Oh my goodness"? I feel actually that is having quite an architectural and historic impact. And I do really understand that they require a new area for them to, to grow, and they need the toilet facilities and everything, but at the cost of a medieval church, which is quite stunning, I feel is a high price to pay.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, yeah.
I'm just wondering, committee, whether you'd like a little bit of advice, so we're all clear before you go on to vote. Your duty is to determine the application as submitted, not to design what you would like there. So that is not an option open to us.
Thank you. Councillor Ganesh.
Thank you, Chair. I think we are not heritage experts. The only heritage or the most senior heritage expert's comment was, remain of the firm view that the extension's harmful impact could be significantly reduced through a more sympathetic architectural approach. So this is what we've heard from Historic England. That's one of the concerns that I have. The second is the number of trees losses can, I would like to see more detailed about how those are mitigated in the plans, which maybe we are in a situation, we completely understand the fact the church do need an additional space, the community need an additional space, there's no doubt about it. But the question is whether is this the right design to go with, or do we mitigate enough of the loss of trees? So I'm happy to propose to defer this and come back if planning officers and applicants work together as it is.
I'll repeat my advice. That's not an option. Your duty is to determine the application as it is, not to ask officers to go away and amend the application with the applicant.
Okay.
So Ganesh, do you want to finish up?
Thank you, and thanks for clarifying that. On that basis, as it is, I'm struggling to support this application.
My view on it is, and we talked about this on site, is that sometimes it is better to try to have a contrasting structure than something that tries to blend in with the modern, by using modern techniques. And I think, to me, this is a classic case of something that is functional, not unattractive, distinctly different from the church itself. It doesn't damage the appearance of the church. And the building has a history of evolution, and buildings must evolve to stay relevant, and particularly, I feel, churches. And I don't have an issue with the structure at all. You can always tinker with things, but at the end of the day, this is what's in front of us. It fulfills the need of the church and its growing community. And I don't see, there is harm because things are changing. But does is it better, does it outweigh the harm? And personally, I think it does. So I would be quite happy to move for the officer's recommendation. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Jones was first up there. So anybody else wish to speak before we take a vote? Councillor McCormick.
So the crux of this is that, in appearance, the extension appears incongruous. There's a degree of harm that's referenced in the report, but the degree of harm is not so great as to warrant refusal of the application. So if anybody was minded to refuse the application, they'd have to come up with reasons in planning law to do that. Having been visiting the site, the key views, the north and south views, I think there's a degree of mitigation because you've got the lich gate between the proposed extension and the road. So I think some of the more sort of harmful, dramatic impacts are mitigated to a degree. It's always a little bit upsetting to think that we're going to be losing trees, but I think that can't be avoided. The trees are outside the church door, that's going to be outside the church door. So on balance, I think the benefits outweigh the harm, and that's why I'm minded to second the application.
Thank you, Councillor McCormick. It is already seconded. If no one else has anything to say, we will move to vote. All those in favour of the motion put forward? 5. All those against? 4. That covers everybody, yeah? Okay, thank you. If the officer would like to.
Thank you, and that application is approved as per the officer report. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. It's you.
Thank you, Chair. This is a householder application for the raising of the roof of South Rock to create first floor living accommodation, including the installation of 7 dormer windows, 3 to the front and 3 to the back, and 3 roof lights, 4 to the back, sorry. The proposal also includes the demolition of the existing conservatory and erection of a single-storey rear extension, that's replacing the conservatory. The construction of a front porch, the conversion of the existing garage and alterations to the fenestration throughout the property. By way of an update, a representation has been received from the occupiers of Bramley Cottage, who refer to their property as Bramble Cottage, have advised that the report incorrectly refers to a garage at their property, which is in fact a single-storey extension accommodating a utility room and a playroom. A window is located within the rear of this extension. Officers have reviewed this matter and can confirm that the impact of the proposed development on this neighbouring property and heritage impacts have been fully assessed with, and the mislabelling of this room does not materially alter the conclusions of the assessment. The application is therefore recommended for approval subject to conditions listed at the end of the report.
Thank you. We have Parish Council, 1 objector and 2 people speaking in support. If the Parish Council representative is here? No? Okay. Sorry?
They weren't notified of this meeting.
Okay. Okay, so we have an objector, Mr. H. Kerr. If you would like to come forward, take a seat on the right-hand side. When you press the right-hand button, you will have 4 minutes, and I will give you a call at 1 minute to go. That's it. You have 4 minutes.
I'm Henry Kerr, and with my young family, I live next door to this proposal in Bramble Cottage, which on the council systems is Bramley Cottage. It's a non-designated heritage asset. As you've heard, there was a mistake in the papers you were sent and in the Historic Environment Team response. They said that a garage forms a wide part of a wide gap between the 2 properties. I wish we had a garage. We don't. This building is a continuous part of the dwelling and heritage asset with the exact same protections under policy. It extends just 81 centimetres from the boundary. I urge you to look at the photos we submitted and judge for yourself if that is a wide gap between the buildings, as written in the report. The update report says that the new first floor would be 6 metres from our building. So you have a 2-storey building under the proposal on a hill, 6 metres away from a 1-storey part of a heritage asset on lower ground. That cannot possibly be consistent with your duty under EM11 to, and I quote, conserve or enhance the heritage asset. And that's before you consider the effect on the garden, which under the MPPF is part of the setting. Look at the street scene and the north elevation. The additional height and massing is looming over our garden, creating a sense of enclosure and damaging the setting of the asset. No real daylight or sunlight assessment has ever been produced, despite our diagrams raising the question. And the update report has not really engaged with the mistake. It says, don't worry, We meant something different all along, and trust us, we fulfilled our statutory duty under Section 72 of the Planning Act 1990 to pay special attention in a conservation area. Well, forgive me for not trusting a correction that took 3 days when the assessment that got the facts wrong took 4.5 months. It's simply not possible that the officers fulfilled those duties while making that mistake. It's like me going on a walk with you and saying I've paid special attention to the map while pointing to a building that doesn't exist. So the reports are unreliable as a matter of fact, as conceded, and in all probability, as we wrote, as a matter of law. You must set those reports aside and consider these facts yourself. The proposal would add 50% to the height of Southrope, which lies on higher ground than Bramble Cottage. The ridgeline of the roof would rise from approximately 1/2 metre below Bramble Cottage to about 2 metres above it. The extra height and massing would loom over our garden's southern boundary, creating a 3-storey effect. Southrope would become the most dominant property in this part of the conservation area, the horizontal scale of a bungalow, the vertical scale of a 2-storey house on a hill. That cuts against what the appraisal of the conservation area identifies as the area's special appearance, the linear arrangement of well-spaced historic buildings. And I note that the officer's report also said that there was a positive contribution from the variety in this area, when in actual fact the conservation area appraisal says well-spaced historic buildings with a uniformity of appearance. The officers simply aren't implementing the policy. They simply haven't paid special attention. We feel let down by the council. But the most important thing is not us today, it's that if you approve tonight, people like my young children, who will enjoy this historic area for decades to come, are going to ask, how was something so obviously contrary to your policies and statutory duties ever allowed to permanently disfigure the conservation area like this? I urge you to refuse. The applicants should come back with something that complies with policy and is more reasonable on heritage and in terms of our amenity concerns. Please refuse. Thank you.
Thank you. If you'd like to stay seated, no, if you'd like to stay seated, please. Questions from members, if there are any. Members? Questions? No? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. We will move to questions to officers. Sorry, another speaker. Sorry. In support, we have Mr. and Mrs. Fitzgerald. You have 4 minutes. I will give you a shout at 1 minute to go.
Do I turn it off first or just?
No, you're on.
Straight on. Okay. Sorry. Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. We are Victoria and Tom Fitzgerald, the applicants and owners of Southrope, and speaking in support of our planning application. We welcome the planning officer's recommendation for approval. We bought this property 4 years ago to become our forever home, knowing it stuck out as a 1970s bungalow in a village full of mixed architecture 2-storey houses. We always intended to enhance Southrope in a way that was proportionate to its generous, almost half-acre plot, and as 4 2-storey thatched cottages used to be housed on the plot, we've always believed a 1.5-storey home to be reasonable. It's extremely important to us that we convert the property in a sustainable and sympathetic way, working with what's already there as opposed to demolishing. We've looked hard at the most considerate way to add an additional storey whilst maintaining functionality, which explains why we are effectively applying to add only half a storey on a road full of 2-storey houses. We also hit the gable ends to minimise any impact to the neighbours. We've done what we can to make Southrope temporarily work for our family, including dividing a bedroom into 2 to get us a small 4th bedroom which acts as an office. But as a family of 4, hopefully soon to be 5 as we're going for another round of IVF, this bungalow is not suitable for modern family living, and yet the plot and positioning offer our children a beautiful life with space and fresh air. We've become deeply embedded in our local community. Tom runs a village event, we contribute greatly to village fundraisers, and our son attends Long Parish Primary, where I'm treasurer of the PTA. To not be able to convert Southrope into a home suitable for a family of hopefully 5 would have a significant impact on our lives and our son's schooling. There have been some objections to the proposal, including from the Parish Council. The comments focus on the visual impact of the development on the neighbouring dwelling of Bramble Cottage and the Hurstbourne Prize Conservation Area. We recognise they have pointed to the plot's elevation when comparing heights to Bramble Cottage. That elevation is an existing feature of the site, not something that this application creates, and Southrope is also well set back from the road, further reducing any visual impact. Despite sitting at the middle elevation of the three properties, our proposed ridge height of 7.8 metres will still be the lowest of the three: Paddock View, Bramble Cottage and Southrope. In both March and June, the Historic Environment team submitted statements of no objection to the development, confirming that there is sufficient separation between the part of Southrope being raised and Bramble Cottage, that the materials are appropriate and that the proposal would not be out of character with this part of Long Parish Road. No windows are proposed on the side facing Bramble Cottage, so there's no new overlooking of the property. You'll have seen a recent submission from the Kerrs regarding the boundary between the properties. Bramble Cottage was formerly 2 cottages, now combined and since extended 3 times by previous owners, most recently on the side nearest Southrope. And it's the distance from that extension to our house which is relevant, not to our garage, which isn't changing in height. Based on the topographical survey, the 5.2 metre figure in the officer's report is the distance from the part of Southrope that is increasing in height to the shared boundary. The distance from that same point to Bramble Cottage's extension itself is 6 metres. This is the relevant reference for assessing any impact. Early in the process, we invited our neighbours at Bramble Cottage to discuss the proposal with us over dinner because we genuinely wanted to understand and address any concerns. Since then, we've provided further information in response to comments received, most notably the street scene, and remain committed to a scheme that responds sensitively to its setting. We respectfully ask the committee to agree with the planning officer's recommendation. The proposal has been carefully designed to respect its surroundings and minimise impact on neighbouring properties, providing a sustainable long-term home for our family. We therefore ask you to approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you. If you'd like to stay seated. Got any questions from members? No? Okay, thank you very much. If you'd like to retake your seats, we will move to questions to officers. Councillor Miller. Councillor McCormick.
Yeah, officers, I'd like a little bit of understanding. Paragraph 8.14 on page 187. It says under heritage, we're back to the heritage business again. Numbers 23, 24, 25 Long Parish Road are also notable buildings. However, given the distance, the proposal would have no impact to these properties. Is Bramley Cottage number 22? Because I'm looking at the location plan on 195. The others aren't numbered, but if we've got a string of notable buildings starting with Bramley Cottage, you know, it starts making a little bit of sense to the street scene. That's what I'm trying to get my head around. That starts with 22, is carried on with 23, 24 and 25. But then you say, because of the distance from this application. Well, it runs on in a line in the street scene, does it not? They're not separated, but it's not how you put it in the report. I just wanted clarification of my own mind. I've got that understanding.
Yes, it seems, I've just checked GIS, I can see that these properties, numbers 20,
Because they're not numbered on the diagram.
23, yes, they are.
That's why I'm asking the question. It suddenly ends up with 26 further down the road.
So they are detached from Bramley Cottage, so they are a terrace, they are detached. I understand in discussions with the conservation officer that they weren't considered to be harmed by virtue of the development, which was just effectively increasing the footprint above the existing built form.
Okay, but there are 4 properties of notable heritage merit adjacent to this application property.
Yes, but the officer has considered that the impact on those properties, by virtue of being detached by another property, would not result in harm to the character and appearance of these properties. I think.
Okay, Councillor McCormick.
What's the height difference between the ridge as it is now as a bungalow and the proposed 1.5-storey building?
So it's 2.6 metres. There's a street scene drawing That's it there, yeah. So you can see that it will rise higher than Bramley or Bramble Cottage, but it still sits lower than Paddock View. And up beyond Paddock View, there's then a terrace which rises to a similar height, and then another detached property of a similar height. So it gentles down the street, the ridge height within the street scene.
Okay. Any other questions?
Okay, I'm looking at the proposed street scene on page 199, which goes on to 200 as well. I appreciate what the objector is saying, that it might feel that they are being overlooked, but bearing in mind that the little extension that they've got on the side of Bramley Cottage, I don't believe has got any openings, and the site that we're talking about is set back. I don't think that there's going to be really a question of overlooking. I think it's probably a fear of overlooking as much as anything here. The garage is not being, it's not gaining extra height. The garage is as it is. It's the house itself which is gaining a little bit in height to accommodate more accommodation. So I do understand the objector being concerned, but at the moment, until I hear what other people are saying, I'm going with the officer recommendation on this.
Thank you. Councillor McCormick.
Yeah, it's quite a big footprint because it's a bungalow. Difference in ridge height, 2.6 metres. I don't think you could get any less than that. The garage is not being increased in height. The building, the new building, is set back a bit, so it's not directly next to the neighbour's property. There are no windows overlooking, from what I can see on the drawing. So I understand concerns, but I don't think the visual intrusion or the overlooking aspects of it are sufficiently great to warrant a refusal, if I'm honest with you.
Are you putting forward a motion?
Yeah, I will move the recommendation.
Okay. Before I go to Councillor Jones, to have that seconded.
I'm sorry, no, I was getting
No, I understand. Yeah, I was just asking if there was a seconder to the motion. Councillor Bound. Now.
Yes, I think the other thing, obviously, the ridge line is, like the others, is parallel with the road, and so there's not a large area of the ridge facing this. It is offset, and in fact the roof is hipped. I think the hip is quite significant in the potential for shading. So I think it's not a huge damage to harm to that neighbour.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? Right, Councillor Ganesh.
Unfortunately, I haven't had the privilege to see the site by myself to understand. But by looking at the GIS and the road view, I could understand where these two are located. It's not in parallel, and I doubt if there is any sort of an impact of this proposal to the Bramley Cottage.
Thank you, Councillor Court.
This is perhaps just more of an observation, but reflecting on this, I think this particular application would have benefited from a site visit.
Okay, we have a motion on the table to approve the officer's recommendation. We'll call for a vote. All those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All those against? 3. That's everybody. Okay, if the officer would like to go through the decision.
Thank you, and that application is approved as per the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We now move to agenda item 6. Who's introducing that? That's you. Over to you, Mike.
Thank you, Chair. So this report concerns a proposed change to the variation to the Section 106 agreement attached to original planning permission for a scheme in Bishop's Green for 42 dwellings. That scheme has been trying to be progressed with land at Etchingswell Road, Bishop's Green. It was originally granted in March 2023. The applicant has effectively been seeking to provide the affordable housing. So it was originally provided with 4% affordable housing, which was 17 units, with a split of 4 first homes, 4 shared ownership homes, 9 social rented homes. The 4 first homes are still proposed to be retained as first homes. It's the 13 other affordable units that were going to be social rented and shared ownership. In summary, the applicant has not been able to get a registered provider on board to deliver those, and so has spent some time trying to look at different alternatives. That has included discussions with our housing enabling officer to see whether there's any other options for other providers. There are none through that exploration of work. Therefore, the applicant has come back with an alternative proposal. Rather than simply seek to not provide the affordable housing or seek an offsite contribution, they proposed a low-cost market housing provision, which still fits with the definitions of affordable housing in the MPPF. So, in effect, the variation sought is to convert the 13 affordable units into 13 discounted market affordable homes instead. And the recommendation is for approval.
Thank you. There's obviously nobody else here to speak. Do the members have any questions? Councillor Miller?
Am I clear that no one wanted to take this up for shared ownership?
No registered provider was available to manage it effectively. So it's not the demand for them in the first place, it's there being a registered provider to deliver effectively the affordable housing.
By a registered provider, do you mean a housing association? Because I'm going to come back to you on this one.
Yes.
Fine. I had the Orem site in Chinham. I had a discussion with the planning officers, in fact it was Sue Tarvett. We sat in an office with the developer and he said he could not provide, he could only provide 28% affordable housing. I turned around and said, have you considered shared ownership? He said, give me 24 hours. It took him 2. And he came back as a developer and he promoted the shared ownership. He couldn't sell them fast enough. Now, you say, has an investigation gone back to the developer? Because this was developer driven, it didn't have to go to a registered provider. Now, shared ownership is a very attractive proposition for the young people in our borough because it gets them on the housing ladder. And it's very unfortunate that I see that it's fallen by the wayside here. Now, this is obviously discussions between planning officers and whoever this is. I don't know who it is, but I find it very disappointing to see that it hasn't gone back to shared ownership, because that I know, because I've proven in my own ward, it's a very attractive proposition for the younger people in this borough.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, so just to be clear, the applicant is Bewley Homes, so they're the applicant on this occasion. I think there's a couple of things there which should probably differentiate from that, and I do recall the Orem site, but differentiate. One would be the time that's elapsed then, because that was probably 2017-ish from memory. So quite a lot has changed, I guess, into the market. The other part that I think we're seeing quite frequently now is, obviously this is in Bishop's Green, so a more rural element of the district, and there does seem to be a trend around registered providers being less likely to take on affordable homes in those areas. And then the third thing is, I suppose, scale. This is 13 units, so whether there's the appetite from a registered provider point of view to take on those and manage those in that way. So Our housing officer has been involved in this all the way along and has explored different options. I haven't got a full list of what all those are, but this was seen as the best solution available within those parameters.
Thank you. Any more comments, questions? Okay. Councillor Watts, do apologise.
I just find it quite concerning that a housing association won't bring it, there isn't a provider that would pick this up, because places like Sidmonton and rural, where I live in a rural community, I know it's a bit bigger than round Bishop's Green, there will be young people that will need homes. And I know that a lot of the housing associations, not only if they're not going to pick this up, they also don't like older properties, which I imagine around Bishop's Green there's probably a number of those as well. I find that quite disappointing that we can't persuade one of our housing associations to pick this up. And it concerns me that there may be people that can't afford to live in that area and end up having to move out, even with a discounted market rate, because people on low incomes around working farm workers can't afford to buy. And I just find that extremely disappointing.
Okay, Councillor Ganesh.
Yeah. I think I echo the committee's comments about, I think this is really concerning, because especially when we are building some sites with 100% affordable homes with a mixture of shared ownerships, if we can't find a provider, is that, or they are not willing to take something because the next option will be considered, which is social housing or the other options. Because I'm trying to understand, is that the market playing with us, or is it something that there's a genuine, not much appetite by anyone to take it? Because we are proposing 100% affordable homes. We have approved one recently, and there's one coming up. So how are we going to manage the situation? Is that just significant? Is it rural and 13 homes in an isolated kind of a scenario, or is it a borough-wide scenario? Because it is a bit worrying for me by looking at where we are with this.
Thank you, Councillor. Don't want to deviate too much from, because I appreciate it's a wider topic than just this specific proposal. I think what we're finding, just in terms of context, is exactly that point. Rural affordable housing does appear to be more difficult to deliver than it did 5-10 years ago. There does seem to be that trend. I'm not going to say that is for every single site, but just looking at this application, efforts have been made to find a different provider, efforts have been made, so it's not as if the developers just come along and said, I've tried to look at one provider, they wouldn't provide it, now I'd like to switch to something else. This has happened over a period of time. It's involved our housing officer also making inquiries to see if there are any registered providers of different types at different scales, because obviously you'll be aware the registered providers are at different scales themselves, and there is no interest effectively in taking them forward. So that in a planning context, just bringing it back to that, the key thing for us is still to retain it in a form of affordable housing. And I appreciate the point that Councillor Watts raised in terms of affordability and whether it meets the same needs. But if there's no option to deliver it through a registered provider, effectively the next best thing is to secure it as affordable housing of a different type, which this proposal does. Beyond that, I think some of these questions probably go into a sort of a wider point around affordable housing provision in the borough as a whole. And like I say, there'll be huge variables, town versus rural, scales, etc., which will all come into play.
Yeah.
So are we disproportionately discriminating rural youngsters who would be willing to get through their property ladder through this shared ownership that they could probably tap into?
We're not discriminating against anyone. We're saying that what's been put forward isn't deliverable because there's not a registered provider to take it on. So it's not a proposal from the council to make that change. It's an applicant coming to the council and explaining that they can't deliver what was originally proposed from that perspective. Beyond that, in terms of, as I say, the trends and the reasons why, I think that goes beyond this specific report and this particular application.
Thank you. Councillor Bound.
Yeah, I understand all the comments that are being made here, but that's not what's before us. And what I would really like to know, what happens if we don't agree with paper?
I would imagine there'll be a different proposal would come forward instead. I'm not going to speculate what that will be, but this is a proposal for affordable housing, which is why it's the...
Councillor McCormick, did I see your hand raised?
Yes, Chair. To me, I mean, this seems like a fairly straightforward request to loosen some conditions and restrictions. If that results in, a more likely delivery, albeit a compromised delivery, then I'm prepared to accept that. I don't think we should be making it too hard because that risks delivery in the first place.
Are you moving to approve?
I'll move to approve. Yeah.
Councillor Bound seconding. Anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Watts.
Sorry, I'm not awake tonight. With the discounted pricing, I can't remember the term. Discounted market value, thank you. What does that mean? Could anybody buy them? I'm just concerned that then you might end up with people buying them to rent out privately and they won't go to the right people anyway. I know that's not a planning concern, but I just wondered if there was any.
So there would be a means testing of sorts. The mechanism for that, I wouldn't be able to explain the detail, but there would be means testing in sorts. So there would be that part. The second part is that it also need to be included within the 106, effectively a covenant that it would have to stay at that level for resale as well. So if someone bought it and then,
Okay.
Okay, thank you. If the officer would like to comment. Sorry, announce.
Thank you, Chair. That application for variation of the Section 106 agreement is approved as per the recommendation in the report.
We now move to agenda item 7. It's the last item on the agenda this evening. And if you'd like to.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so this report concerns the proposed national scheme of delegation. Members may recall from the mandatory training that we talked about the changes that are coming in on the 31st of October this year. The report sets out the basis of the changes, when it will come into effect, and then from section 2 onwards sets out the different types of applications that would be delegated to officers as a must. So they are Schedule 1 applications, and then Schedule 2 applications that could still come before committee subject to effectively what they call a gateway test. That gateway test is explained in from paragraphs 2.4 onwards, and effectively it is a process by which there needs to be consideration as to whether the application raises a significant planning matter having regard to the development plan and any other material considerations, and where the application raises an economic, social, environmental issue of significance to the local area. So that gateway test has to be applied to those Schedule 2 applications. That then has to be agreed through the nominated officer and nominated member, the nominated officer typically being the head of planning and infrastructure for this council, nominated member being the chair of committee, and there would have to be deputies in place to ensure obviously continuity during that process. The work that needs to happen next is in relation to the process by which that Schedule 2 decision would be made, and that is work ongoing, so referring members to paragraph 2.16. That work is happening now and will continue over the summer. The changes in terms of the scheme of delegation as a whole will also have to require changes to the Constitution, Work is progressing in terms of our own establishing of that Schedule 2 process, with also having discussions with Hart and Rushmore in terms of seeing whether there's any ability to be consistent in preparation for what's coming down the line. Beyond that, there will then be production and guidance for all members, parish and town councils, additional training, and then communication to applicants, etc., as part of that rollout. There would also have to be a setting up of a separate public register to record effectively which applications are going to committee and why, and vice versa, those ones which are not. So there's a transparency point to all of this as well. So huge amount of work still to happen. This report is just really trying to put this national scheme of delegation obviously before you in the public domain from a transparency point of view, but to note that there would be then a follow-up report once that detail has been worked through ahead of the implementation on the 31st of October. So going back to the recommendation, it is for members to note the government's decision to establish the national scheme of delegation, the fact that there will need to be changes to the council's constitution, and then a second point, which is to welcome a further report, most likely in October 2026, informing the committee of how those arrangements would work. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. This isn't really one for a lot of questions because we're being asked to note what is essentially legislation. We're asked to acknowledge really what we've been told and the fact that there will be more information and more discussion to come. So not a lengthy debate topic at this point.
Yeah, when are we going to have a chance to debate this as a Development Control Committee? Or are we just going to sit here and watch what legislation comes down the pipe? Because I think everybody who's been involved in planning committees will have an awful lot of questions. I think one of them is, will ward members ever be allowed to call an application into the committee? That's probably the kind of question that we would like answered. If it's a no, well, we know where we stand.
That is one of the things that would go. So effectively, numbers of objections at the moment, as you're aware, the Constitution allows for applications to come to committee when it reaches a certain threshold in terms of numbers of objection, or where there's a member call-in. Those would be removed. That is part of the changes that the National Scheme of Delegation requires. So the gateway test doesn't allow for those to be the points at which applications are referred. So yes, the member call-in ability would be removed. Equally, the number of objections in itself wouldn't be the matter which determines whether something comes to committee.
Okay. If there's a different question or topic, I'll allow it. Councillor Ganesh.
Thank you, Chair. I know we've had this training before and there were some briefs and you promised for a debate at some point in October. But at the moment, how are we giving enough confidence to our residents saying, okay, we will have the same level of transparency that you've had all these years from October onwards, because you're going to take that very ability to sort of local representation to have a thorough debate on it. So,
not, very simply, the government has decided that that is not the way things are going to be. They are essentially controlling which applications can come to committee at all, and they've imposed the test, and that is the only test we can apply as a matter of law. So it comes from national legislation. There's nothing you can do about it.
It's a direct attack on our local democracy to start with. How are we going to take the local ward councillors?
Chair, I appreciate Councillor Ganesh's concerns, but this sounds very much like we're entering into a political debate.
One person at a time.
Question.
Andy.
I know this is not a political meeting, but this is a direct attack on our local democracy. As being councillors, it does question our local representation and the transparency aspect of the residents able to attend the DC and express their views, and members able to call in if necessary. I don't think we are in the right situation to discuss this at the moment because the legislation comes from the central government, but how do we translate that locally in a better way to give the best for our residents?
Chair, we haven't received this report yet, and yet we've got members already commenting on it when they haven't been following any kind of logical process. I do have a question to ask. It's immensely frustrating to hear people making political points when I actually have a valid question.
Right, valid questions I will accept. Councillor Ganesh, can you?
Chair,
No,
my questions were based on the report that was put in front of us.
No.
And I'm not having any sort of a debate with any councillors at all. The question directed towards the chair and head of planning, my Townsend. If Andy McCormick, Councillor Andy McCormick, has any issues with that, he should be raising with the chair, not with me.
Okay, that's noted. Thank you. Andy, Councillor McCormick, do you have a question?
Well, it's more.
It's got to be a question.
I'll provide a bit of context for. You've had your say.
Guys, can we control this meeting?
I can understand the need for consistency at national level. Where I do have, and I don't wish to preempt this October report, we'll get something. Where I have a little bit of uncertainty is where we have large schemes, and I can think of at least 3 at the moment that are coming before us. And I do understand that if we have to potentially tip off the Secretary of State that a committee may be, or minded to refuse something in advance, to what extent does that still allow us to bring before committee all these major applications of 150 houses or 5,000 square metres? Because I think that's what the expectation would be, that we'll be able to arrive at a local decision. Is that still something that we're going to be able to do? I mean, I appreciate that we may not have member call-ins, and I had another question on that, which is like in some cases we, in consultation with officers, agree to a devolved decision unless there's some significant controversy and the recommendation looks like it's going for refusal, in which case it go before committee. Is that likely to happen under the new proposals, or do we not know yet?
So I certainly wouldn't want to preempt the arrangements that, as I say, we're going to be reporting in due course. But I think the point around the referral, which the 150 dwellings referral point, Councillor McCormick, is a good point to raise, because the report sets that out, that is another part of the planning reform that the government's put forward. What that will mean in practice is that if a application for 150 dwellings or more comes to committee, whether it's recommended for approval or refusal is irrelevant. If the committee's resolution was to refuse, then we would have to notify the Secretary of State of that recommendation. It doesn't mean necessarily the Secretary of State will call it in, but it means there has to be a notification process first. So it might still be that the committee's decision does still stand in due course, but you have to go through that loop, if you like, first, before you can issue a decision. In terms of I think I've understood your kind of description of how things operate at the minute. The engagement between ward councillors and planning officers can still happen in exactly the same way it does now. So the kind of understanding, what's happening with an application, where it's going, etc., that can all still happen, just because the call-in ability wouldn't necessarily be there. So that engagement can still take place, which I think is quite an important part, because beyond the decision-making itself, actually the engagement during the process is very key. But as I say, I wouldn't want to preempt the next report in terms of setting out all the details around this.
Okay, Councillor Court.
Very simple question. Will we be able to have the benefit of a debate at the next report, please?
There will be nothing to debate. It's legislation that we're implementing. It's just a question of, complying with the statutory tests that we have to implement and setting out the procedure that allows the council to do that. There's nothing to debate. You can't stop it, in other words. This is going to happen. Right to the government, I suppose, is your only option, but they're not likely to backtrack on it.
Okay. We'll close that now, but I think we just acknowledge that we have been given this information. Is everybody comfortable that we've been given the opportunity to see it? Not talking about the content, but you're okay. Thank you. All right, I'll call the meeting to a close at 8:04. Thank you very much.